conducted a number of investigations and interviewed 2 ground witnesses at the time.
Right.
That story wasn't really taken seriously by world audience. It's just another few reporters dying in Baghdad and nothing to back up the witnesses. But now we have the video that shows that those witnesses were correct. Also, there was an Iraqi police report that Reuters say agrees with their witnesses, and all of them agree with the video.
Sorry to interrupt you. Not long afterwards, Lieutenant Colonel Scott Blythewell from the U.S. military told the New York Times, quote, "There's no question that coalition forces were clearly engaged in combat operations against a hostile force." You even mentioned that quote on your website and on the video itself. And of course, when Reuters requested the video from the Pentagon under the Freedom of Information Act, they didn't get it. With all of that in mind, do you firmly believe that there was a cover-up at play here?
There was certainly spinning the message, and it does seem like there has been a cover-up. The rules of engagement that were used for that circumstance, if the internal assessment was that those rules were correctly applied, and that is the statement the U.S. military made to Reuters, then those rules are a serious problem if they permit such events. But there were clear lies made at the time and shortly after about the military, for example, not knowing how the children were injured and trying to suggest that they didn't know how the journalists were killed. And very early on they listed all the people killed other than the children as insurgents.
Julian Assange, pleasure hearing your thoughts. Thank you very much for agreeing to talk to us here on Al Jazeera.
Okay, folks, I really don't take any joy in this. I mean, I really want to believe that nobody's capable of this kind of stuff. I mean, I have a brother who's in the military, and yes, most of our troops don't do these kind of things, but the problem is that there are enough doing this to really cause some serious problems. I mean, we're bringing these troops into Iraq, Afghanistan for 3, 4, in some cases even 5 tours of duty. I mean, to put that in perspective, soldiers fighting in World War II only had 1 tour of duty, maybe 2 at most, and soldiers fighting in Vietnam had like maybe 2 or 3 tours. And anyone that has even rudimentary understanding of history, recent history, knows how much it really screwed them up. And they're not even allowed much of a break between deployments. I mean, a few years ago, Senator Jim Webb sponsored a bill in the Senate that would have required that U.S. troops serving in active duty combat be given at least as much time on leave as they served. So in other words, if a soldier served in Iraq for 1 year, he would have gotten at least 1 year off after his tour of duty. Now, the bill languished in the Senate, and to my knowledge, hasn't really reached the House. I mean, we need to ask all members of Congress that let this bill die why they're throwing our troops under the bus, ladies and gentlemen. We need to really get on their butts about this. I mean, even soldiers that have been in retirement for years are being forced to go out of retirement and into active duty tours. I mean, some cases, I've heard one case of a soldier as old as 65 being called to active duty in Iraq. I mean, that and the fact that the military has, since the so-called war on terror, started drastically lowering standards for recruitment by allowing many people they would previously have never considered into the military, such as convicted felons and people with histories of violent crimes and mental illness. And when the troops come home with PTSD and other problems, they're not only ignored, but in some cases are even made to serve another tour and then another and then another. Anyone with the slightest ounce of common sense knows this makes incidents like the murders depicted in this video released by WikiLeaks and the incidents at Abu Ghraib, Guantanamo Bay, inevitable. Yet the policy makers the corrupt and spineless politicians who put our troops in these kind of positions by needlessly sending them in harm's way in unconstitutional, undeclared wars in Iraq and Afghanistan for more tours than anyone should ever be forced to serve, and the higher-ups in the U.S. military who have covered up and even encouraged this kind of behavior are the ones that are most responsible for this mess, but they're never held accountable. What the news of Abu Ghraib, what's happening there first got out. Only a few grunts were ever convicted of any crime. Yet, there's evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that they were under orders to do those things. That they were under orders to torture those prisoners. There can be no doubt that the chain of command is telling our soldiers, ordering our soldiers to commit atrocities. I mean, once again, most soldiers are just there just want to survive and go home. But the problem is, I mean, you send them all these tours over there, they're going to become desensitized, so desensitized to violence and death that it just turns many of them into monsters. These politicians, the higher-ups in the military, they all know this. And they're counting on this. They're doing this to help further implement the police state control grid they've been setting up for years. Because once a lot of these soldiers get out, they become police officers. And who are they promoting in the police? They're promoting people with no moral compass. It's pretty sad. And they're driving out police officers that are obeying in military, that are obeying their oath that they took to the United States Constitution. Now, as a matter of fact, there's one officer in particular I'm aware of. His name is Officer Jack McLam. He served as a police officer, I believe, in Arizona. You know, he was just doing his duty. And I think he did like an illegal search or something. I don't remember what it was, but the person he did this to confronted him and basically said, you know, don't you have an oath to the Constitution? You know, he said, yeah. He's like, aren't you aware you're violating the Fourth Amendment? You know. So basically, he felt very bad about this, and he actually did research. He read up on the Constitution, took classes, read books, all this stuff, and realized that a lot of what was being done in the police department he was serving in and many others, what they were being ordered to do by the chain of command, a lot of people, was unconstitutional. It was illegal. So he tried to educate his fellow officers on what the Constitution really says. And the chief of police of that department actually fired him. Fortunately, he knew enough about the law to basically get himself reinstated. So the chief just kept firing him, and then he kept bringing up legal issues, and then he just kept getting reinstated until the chief of police for that department tried to get him killed. He actually tried to get him killed. And here's how he did it. He did it by assigning him to the most dangerous beat in their jurisdiction. Alone. And he said to all the other officers in there, if Officer Jack McLam is in trouble, if he calls for help, don't help him. So he got in a firefight in this beat, and he got so badly injured that he almost died. Almost died. His doctor had to put him on medical retirement. But Jack McLam, even after going into medical retirement, has continued to try to educate police officers and military regarding the Constitution